2025 grant application info session. Right now we have applications open through November 10th, and we are your hosts today, Michael Chavez and Lisa Gaudes. So a little background, PSYAH here is a creative placemaking program supported for short-term, collaborative, and community-led projects that engage public to transform Denver's outdoor public spaces. We're thinking about alleyways, places in parks, places where sidewalks are or transit and things like that. The goal is to build civic engagement, honor heritage, and beautify neighborhoods while also enriching community and making it vibrant outdoor in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, so as Lisa mentioned, these are temporary site-specific projects that enhance public spaces, engage communities in placemaking. They can be, in the past, we've had some very creative, unique projects. And, we want to engage people with various abilities. So obviously, I'm a person who studied visual art for 30 years, but I try to think of, how might another person experience your project if it's not visual? Can it be tactile? What if a person is in a wheelchair? What if a person is taller, shorter? There's all kinds of different experiences and ways to experience art in public spaces. And we encourage you to consider that as you're developing your proposals. These are community-driven projects, so they really tend to be micro-local. We've done projects in every corner of Denver County, but what we love about this program is that it really goes into like the really, like I said, like a micro-local level of a community. It can be things that are functional amenities, such as seating or tables, bike racks. It can be art for art's sake. It could be a combination of all the above. It could be a design intervention that helps kind of solve a problem or some kind of unique characteristic of a public space. We've had projects that address bus stations or areas in parks or walkways along public right-of-way. But we're asking folks to really think outside the box, and this is an opportunity also to pilot an idea for maybe a larger project. And that's really where this program came from originally, was to create pilot ideas that can maybe be scaled up in a more permanent way.
Yeah, and I would share too that we really do want these to be site specific. We'll say that often and loudly, and really collaborate with the community. The most successful projects are tackling some kind of challenge in an urban, or not an urban, but in an outdoor area. This could be that there's no lit pathway for youth to cross a park during the winter time, or a space that's utilized often, but there's no call out to a need there, or shade or something like that. So the overview for timeline, our call for proposals, again, runs through November 10th. The award notification will go out late November, although it's holiday, so maybe early December. Funding allocation will be from December 2025. Well, I should say project timeline is through January 2026. This is a little wrong. I need to update this. Sorry. Funding will go out December or January, but then project timeline is December through January 2026, not 25. And then here's some of our key requirements. Michael and I are going to just go back and forth here.
Yeah, so we mentioned it has to take place in outdoor public space within the city and county of Denver. And to put a finer point on that, it has to be, it can't be privately owned public space. It has to be city and county of Denver managed public space, which at the end of this, I'm going to put a link into the chat that goes to our toolkit, which has links to things like maps around the city. So if you're unsure about a public space or whether or not it's like overseen by Denver Parks and Rec, or maybe in some cases, privately managed public space. That's something that you'll want to know before applying, because it does have to be in city and county of Denver property to qualify for this grant. It can be led by an individual, a business, an organization, a nonprofit, anyone who's connected directly to the community where the project will be implemented. And what we mean by temporary physical installation is a minimum of 3 months, but it can be up to a year or more.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. We've had projects that have lasted longer, just depending on the maintenance update and who's maintaining it. We've had local business improvement districts kind of take on the maintenance year by year, depending. And of course, for a budget where it's up to $10,000, structurally building something that lasts forever is probably nearly impossible, especially with Colorado and the elements and being in public realm. But we are flexible, just dependent on the situation. And then, again, we want it to be free and open to members of the public. We also want to make sure that you're in good standing with Denver Arts and Venues, meaning that there's no past projects to be finalized yet. And in some cases, we can work with you depending on where you are with your project or program from another grant or including this one. So for program goals, this is sort of the meat. And this kind of gets reflected back into the scoring criteria for our review panel. We want to make sure these are new projects, that they're site specific, and they propose original ideas that bring new energy into a space or address a local challenge or filling a spatial need in a creative and artistic way. Exclamation point on that. And then engaging the community, we find that, again, those are the most successful projects where, when possible, we really encourage you to have meaningful and involved community members in the design or implementation or the actual, like if you do a ribbon cutting or something like that, that you're really engaging with folks around in and around that community, which, the outcome of that is so much greater too. And we've found that neighborhoods or neighbors or others or business owners the more they know, they tend to also take a lot of pride in making sure that piece is maintained and supported, and that story gets told throughout that neighborhood. Reflecting the local community, we would love to see a demonstration and a connection with the neighborhood itself, and again, that community, so that you're considering the local culture, any local history, and the voices around that neighborhood or community. Collaboration. We love to see collaboration. While we are one funder, we always encourage many more, or donations that come in, or working with local businesses, local artists, and other organizations or residents. And then for those that may not know, we did update our cultural plan last May of this year, called Denver Creates. So a lot of the work we're doing, we want to make sure it aligns with that. Please see that on our website. Maybe Michael can find a link to that, or we can at the end of this as well. We really want to make sure that you understand our alignment there, and that cultural plan was really tied to what the community was asking. So that was a not top-down approach, but really what the community is looking for in a collective commitment to the arts, to make sure that we're thriving and in a happy, thriving cultural ecosystem. So please take a look at that.
Okay, here are some eligible expenses that you can use with your grant funds. Planning and personnel, project management, administrative support, anybody who's helping work on the project. Professional services, if there happens to be any permit fees, or professional consultants if you need to consult maybe a designer or an engineer. Insurance, you'll need insurance for these projects. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And any material supplies and maintenance that you'll need for your project, any art supplies, equipment rentals, building materials. If you're doing a project in a park, they will require that you, when it's deinstalled, that you return the space back to its original condition, which might mean replacing some sod or anything that was kind of disturbed for the installation. You'll be responsible for returning it back. And installation and maintenance needs.
Yeah, and I'll touch a little bit on insurance. As you go into this, you just want to make sure you are personally and your project is covered in some way. This can come in many forms. You may need workers' comp if you have employees. General liability or professional liability is something to look into. And at the end of the day, it's really assessed through what the work is, what the materials are, the weight, the size, how many people are taking part in the process, how long it's up, where it is. If you need some kind of design engineer for something larger, that's a big project. So just thinking about the expectation to have some kind of insurance for the length of the project being up, like installation up and down. And then as well for maintenance needs in your budget, we always encourage putting some extra buffer in there if you anticipate needing to go out and restore something or update paint or do something like that for the life of the project. And I'll mention on planning and personnel, we really love to see you get paid if you were the project manager. Obviously, same with professional services. If you're getting a designer, an engineer, or an artist, we want to see them fairly paid as well.
So the groups that will review your application are comprised of these city agencies, including us, although Lisa and I do not vote. Denver Parks and Recreation, many of our projects are in parks, Denver parks. There's close to 300 parks throughout city and county of Denver. The Commission on Cultural Affairs, so there'll be at least one member from that group, and that is a mayoral appointed committee of people in the community that are tasked with overseeing public art process, but also anything that arts and venues is overseeing, and an advisory to the mayor's office as well. Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, which is often referred to as DOTI, D-O-T-I. That's the city's public works department. So anything in a transit or public right-of-way would have to be reviewed by DOTI. Risk management will help us assess insurance needs and requirements for a project. And then the community and planning development, which is the planning department for the city, helps us weigh in because they have perspective on city plans and other happenings around the city. So it's important for all of us to have all these folks at the table to help us assess applications.
Yeah, and it's super helpful for everyone also in the end, because while we have these folks reviewing these, it's like having a great cohort of city agencies together, looking at what the community is interested in doing and considering how to sort of become creative and flexible with the applicants on how to help them implement their projects. So if you do get funded, these are also the same people at the table to help that implementation process, and it makes it so much easier. Case by case.
Exactly.
So with selection review criteria, this is really what the review team is looking at when they're reading through your application. And I should also back up and say that this year we do have 100,000 in grants to give out total, and the grants are up to $10,000, and typically all usually land around $10,000. So for your outline in your application, we're looking at the program description, making sure that it's well defined as a project, and has goals and shows the impact on the space and the community. Alignment with our PSYAH goals and guidelines. Please see those on our website, as well as the cultural plan. And we want to know that your application is demonstrating a strong alignment with those goals, and has clear explanation of the purpose of the location, and or the site.
Mm-hmm.
Program impact and relevance. We like to see applications that articulate new, innovative, and creative approaches to project location sites and the community. I feel that every year of doing this since 2014, this is one of the most interesting programs because of the things that pop up that I had never thought of and hadn't seen before. And we always have really new ideas, and some similar ideas from the past that have really worked well too. Program audience. We want to make sure you have a well-defined project with clear description of connection to the community and your intended audience. Although it should be open to the public, and anyone that walks by it or sees it, it's open and free to everyone. But if there's some kind of deeper connection there to help that site-specific thing meet its own goal, we also want you to articulate that and plans for any community engagement opportunities. Feasibility and planning, as you can imagine, we want to make sure you've thought out materials, and your creative practices. And sometimes you may need to hire an engineer or hire an artist or hire a designer. That you have realistic timelines. When it comes to timelines, typically, if we're funding in December, most projects don't get installed until it's warmer out. So when it's spring, summer, or even fall, that's a pretty typical expectation, and things can get moved. Permitting can be a little tricky sometimes on timing, so you want to be sure you build in a buffer to make sure you're getting your permits in and everything's thoughtfully kind of coordinated, which is certainly what Michael can help you do in the implementation part. That you have a realistic budget, that it aligns with, cost of materials, and cost of materials have gone up. So making sure that you're doing a little bit of research there on what things cost. And then again, strong partnerships that add value to the process and implementation. And then again, including maintenance and sort of a plan for de-accession as well.
Something I'll add quickly, so to the feasibility planning, is even though these projects are meant to be temporary, they still need to be constructed and installed in a very durable way. They need to be outdoors, so they're kind of semi-temporary in that respect. We don't want them to fall apart right away. And things that are in public space, they often get messed with. So we want to make sure that they're safe, well built, can't hurt anyone, considering accessibility, all of those things. So really keep that in mind as you're developing your proposal.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, not everyone needs to come to the table in their application fully baked. I don't know how you could, because you just don't know, sort of, when you pick a project in a public realm, you don't know what you might uncover with our city agencies. So be prepared to adapt. If you may need to shift the location a little bit or something like that. Same with partners. We know that takes time, and once you get funded, that might be the moment you can leverage more partnerships or funding or collaborations. So understandably, these don't need to be fully realized prior to applying. One of the things that we're including this year that we're excited about is zooming out and back in over the last 10 years on how these projects have been funded throughout our council districts and trying to align more with our goals of uh, getting work and cultural programming and projects more citywide. We're striving for more equitable distribution of projects. Um, this chart shows our council districts with a higher need for activations and areas where new project proposals are encouraged. And we'll have, this is all in our guidelines as well, but it's something to note. There is also a map in our toolkit, so you can look up whatever whatever address or park and understand what council district that's in. And these are the areas that we're prioritizing right now.
Okay. Once you are awarded one of our grants, the first thing you'll do with me and Lisa is an orientation. We'll schedule a meeting to talk about your project specifically, get into the details of things like insurance requirements, timeline, just kind of onboard you with the process, so what the expectations will be. That typically happens. It'll either happen, in December or in January. And then we'll schedule, like Lisa said, not a lot happens in those really deep winter months, but we can do some planning. We can do some vetting with other city agencies, kind of build in our permitting schedule. So for instance, if you have a project in a park, they have a process called quality assurance, quality control, which requires us to send them plans for the installation, what are the materials, and then they circulate it through their stakeholders for feedback and comments, and they'll send those comments back to us. If everything looks okay, then we'll schedule a site visit and meet with the operations team and really get into that nitty gritty of installation. But more often than not, they might have questions, more questions that we may have to answer. So all of those things need to kind of be built into the timeline. And those are things that are good to do in the first quarter of the year, so that when it's time to implement in the warmer weather months, then you're ready. So we'll do ongoing check-ins for implementation, talk about permitting and insurance. And then if you're planning a final project, definitely want to coordinate marketing. We ask that folks, do their own marketing and send their own press releases, but we also have our own marketing department that we would like to tie into and make sure that we're cross promoting any ribbon cuttings or events associated with your project. And then once the project is finished, we'll send you a form that just kind of asks for some specific details of installation, photos, attendance, some testimonials. It's not considered like a report. We don't require reports, but we do like to capture as much information at the end of a project to find out what worked, maybe what didn't, and so we can learn from it.
Yeah, and this is a great storytelling opportunity for us. Once the project's installed, you may again be considering a community gathering or a ribbon cutting. This is really up to you. This whole program is designed to be led by community members for community members. And so we're just here to be this added bonus supporting role system for you to kind of navigate the permitting, the insurance and all that good stuff, but also with marketing, we are more than happy to help post on our social media, put in our newsletter and things like that to help really tell the story of what you've created and encourage people to go visit that site throughout the year or through the timeline of the piece. And yeah, the wrap up only helps us tell that story better and advocate for more projects and programs like this. So, speaking of storytelling, wanted to include this slide to show from 2014 to 2025 some of the impact the programs had. We've distributed over $660,000 through this with over 100 activations. who knows how many real interactions. So we're going to assume a lot. But also looking at that number, that 250 plus community partners, that's really where folks leveraged the programs they did to work with, say, schools or businesses or organizations and that kind of thing, to really engage community. And then we have some examples to share, just to get the juices flowing. And these are all very extremely different case studies. This was Westside Stadium Community Coalition that got the grant. They did the Colfax Viaduct canopy, and did these murals and did some ambient lighting. And then did a community gathering multiple times underneath this space. This took a lot of coordination with a lot of different city agencies and some public-private land as well. So it was really interesting because while we say public space, there's certainly been projects that have blended the lines with public and private. Our money has to go to that private space. But if you partner with someone else and that only helps build out the project more, and they may be funding the other part, you can do something like that as well. So just a note on why this was sort of an interesting collaboration. This is Balfour. This was done with Balfour Senior Living and Housing in the Commons Park area, also in collaboration with Think 360 Arts and some youth. This was called Land Over Time. This is a beautiful canopy and massive structure. And the artwork on it represents some historical relevance of what was there from the past to now. And then they were able to put some signage on their own structure, which was super helpful. But certainly a big undertaking, and engaged over 2,000 people, likely more. Michael, any thoughts on this one you want to add?
I will just say that, we've done this program a little over 10 years. Of course, there are certain themes that have come back, and we've funded, things like a couple basketball court repaintings but when the committee is scoring applications and something like this comes across, it's got everything. It's something we haven't seen before. It's not something we haven't considered. It's ambitious. It has historical relevance. It has very specific relevance to the community that lives right across the street. And it's multi-generational. So it included senior citizens working with young kids. And it was just kind of a beautiful collaboration, and it just kind of encompassed everything that we had hoped this program would deliver. That doesn't mean all projects have to be that way, but these are the types of projects that jump off the page that we're excited to fund.
Yeah, it's scalable. I think people have, obviously walked under here, took naps under here, had a wedding. I think there was a wedding. So the engagement was really fun. And also this structure didn't penetrate the ground. So there was really little to no need for any extra considerations on cleanup, which also made this really compelling. Okay, this was from an artist, Becky Waring Steele. This was in the Westwood corridor. I'm pretty sure some of those are still maybe up. Wonderful project. She made these houses on these poles and was able to integrate these throughout Westwood in multiple areas. This is a great example of one proposal, many projects, to kind of lead people through a path of some kind. Some paint was done or added later. And well, again, these structures are back of garages or people's fences. That part of the project was something that Becky worked with other folks on. And some of that paint had already been there. So I think there was a walkway, and our person from Westwood may know more about this, but this was a area that people took this trail often. And I think there's been many attempts to kind of enliven this space, really enjoyed sort of this surprise, doors opening, window looking through this little house.
Yeah, and I just love the of the three examples we've showed you, just the difference in scale and experience. So the first one was obviously like an underpass, a very large space, kind of event space. The second one was still a pretty large structure, but this project is really meant to be kind of almost like a one-on-one experience. And so you can be thinking of all different types of scale for your project.
Yeah, thank you. Lowry Foundation did this lovely kind of hidden in nature project throughout this what they call the art and architectural loop in this green grassy area that's a very large space, open space. And so off the pathways, they did another multiple site project. This is one of the pieces that's this intended to be bird's nest, kind of hiding a place you could sit. And there's a type of bird you could look for in a QR code about that to do your own bird watching. So another way to engage folks with some technology, but also sort of this surprise element walking through this area. And then City Park Friends and Neighbors applied for this with some artists who built, this was called Color Field at Lily Pond in City Park. This was used to be an actual lily pond in City Park, and they wanted to rejuvenate the idea and colors behind it. So they really did some research on sort of the color palettes they wanted, how to make this work in this vast space with limited materials. I mean, there was a lot of materials, but for the budget they had, I think they did a tremendous job with these wood dowels that they painted and then stuck into the ground. Otherwise, you could see kind of it's just filled in with grass and not very well maintained. No offense to parks. But another opportunity found to kind of re-enliven this space. And I think it was extra special because this was also over COVID, but people absolutely loved walking through this and seeing this. Even from afar, you could really see this piece.
Yeah, it was so unexpected and so simple, but just had a tremendous impact.
And these are the very dowels they use. So you can see their material. That is it for us. Thank you so much for joining us with this. Michael and I are both the representatives for this program. I'm really helping with the front end and back end, while Michael's helping a lot with the implementation of these projects. And so you can find all the details on our website as well under PSYAH here at Arts and Venues Denver.